Yo, welcome to another episode of All About Comics. Joined here by a special guest, good friend. You'll be seeing a bit of him more in the future. We got the absolute geek himself, Matt, in the building. Matt, how you doing, man?
Good, Corbin, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this and talk some comics with you.
Yeah, I'm pumped, man. Just totally pumped. I wanted to do something midway through the year. I mean, I didn't want to do it per se here, but it felt right to do it midway through the year. Of like looking back on the comics we've read, from the big two, from Independence, and just kind of taking stock of where we are, as comic readers in this comic industry at the midway point or thereabouts of the year. So, we're gonna do this in three different parts. We're gonna do this one's Marvel. In the future, we'll do DC, and then of course we'll have our Independence as well. Don't have a date for that yet, but it will be coming out in a timely manner. So just stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're gonna go into Marvel. Excited about it. What we like, what we don't like, everything in between. So let's get this intro in and then let's get started. All right, Matt. So Marvel Comics, man.
Talk to me, Corbin.
I've been going through it. I mean, they have been, we all know, between the Marvel DC wars that have been going on for over half a decade, but there's been a bit of a seismic in my mind sea change over the last year and a half, and that of course was with the inclusion of the absolute universe. And I guess you could tie all in into that, but I would really just say absolute universe is where that started. And I think Marvel's been kind of doing the Marvel thing for the last couple of years, so there's nothing. I wouldn't say they got worse, but I would say the absolute universe and the life that I inject in the comic industry really shed a light into how stale Marvel's been looked at, or is looking, by comparison. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. The let's be honest. If we're being 100% candid here,
We
the
are.
absolute universe has injected a new enthusiasm that DC has needed for a long time. And the absolute universe is such a simple concept because you're taking already established characters and pretty much already established storylines, and you're just making subtle changes and doing subtle things to make things seem different and fresh. And Marvel just isn't following suit with that as much as they're trying to, I guess. You can't right now, you can't touch DC's Ultimate Universe, where their Ultimate line is drastically outselling their main DC titles.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And it's taken that's I mean, the absolute universe, credit to them. We'll talk about DC in the future. It's taken over the industry by storm. It's its own entity. But for Marvel, you're right. They have struggled to come up with anything that even remotely stands a chance on their own end. They're the king of miniseries. Although I guess you could argue any other book outside of their main characters are miniseries. They are, doing the event tie-ins and the movie tie-ins and everything there. But we're going to go into that a little bit. I definitely want to look at the juxtaposition. I guess this is where we're coming at it from, in terms of Marvel kind of looking up and going, okay, how can we match this energy from DC? How can we get readers to be more engaged and be more excited? Because you're going to have those Marvel diehards. You're going to have comic readers like yourself who were in and out Wednesday Warriors every week, every year, gonna read them. But how do we get new people in? And I don't know if they've been doing great. In fact, I would say they've not been doing great. But before we even get into the negative, there's a bunch there. There have been some positives. There have been some books. The Ultimate Universe in general has been great. I think oh well, got some looks there. I mean, in comparison, I thought that the Ultimate Spider-Man, which recently ended, but like that was a good run. That was a different look at Peter Parker.
It was, yes, it was. It was definitely a standout for many, many months. It stinks that it ended so quickly. But I feel like Marvel. I don't know where you want to go with that. If you want me to jump in, here
No, please do.
The Ultimate Universe stuff. But
let's go.
I feel like
when
it comes to the Ultimate Universe, the Marvel had a chance to kind of get ahead of the game and kind of fall right in line with what DC is doing with the Absolute Universe, but they just decided to abruptly end it. Now, I have thoughts on what Marvel might be doing. And not only did they abruptly end it, they kind of made it convoluted because they did like all these Ultimate Universe final this and final that and end of the Ultimate Universe, and now we got
Yeah.
Ultimate Universe final #1 that just dropped today, and so it's like they're kind of getting really convoluted and watering it down, like almost like they don't know what they're doing with their Ultimate Universe. So, but I mean, I have an idea of maybe what they're trying to do behind the scenes,
Hmm.
but
Well, what do
yeah,
you?
for me,
Uh-huh.
Ultimate Spider-Man was great. The
Yeah.
first couple issues of Ultimate X-Men was really good, and then that kinda tanked off. Ultimate Wolverine started really strong, and then by the final 5 issues, that tanked really hard, and it just kinda like it kinda felt like what was it at San Diego last year
Hmm.
that they announced that the Ultimate Universe was ending? I can't
Um.
remember what convention it was last year that
Yeah.
they
I
announced.
think it was.
But last year, it just feels like whenever Marvel announced that they were ending the Ultimate Universe, it almost feels like their creative teams just stopped caring
Or New York.
and
Yeah.
started turning in nothing burgers. And a lot of those books went from really, really strong to nothing burgers.
Yeah, I think you got that nail on the head, and it really was a quick. I guess what I liked about it is the ideas, right? You have ideas that at least give a hook, right? And like you said, you mentioned Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Wolverine. The first couple, okay, great. Like I'm interested in that. Let's kind of go from there. But then over time, it's like, okay, we had that premise, but maybe we didn't have a fully featured story behind it, or maybe now we're just stretching that story out way longer than we needed to. And then juxtaposed with that, Ultimate Spider-Man, which I enjoyed. I definitely thought it took me a minute to get into it compared to others. I was kind of already kind of burned by Marvel, so it was more like, okay, like I guess we'll try it. I didn't know if I would like the idea of an older Peter Parker and what that would look like, and just the new like a recasting of his Rose Gallery and his friends and everything. But it really got me, and it had me hooked through most of its run. But you're right. Like I feel like they did, and that not even earlier. I guess they kind of told the story they wanted to tell. Kind of felt like they rushed toward the end there, but rushed. That's the word I would
Yeah.
use for sure. But I guess I would put that as we could put that as both a victory and a loss. We'll talk about the negative side of that here in a minute. But the victory in the sense that they were willing to take the gamble, and try to do it a different way, try to come with different premises for characters. And yes, ultimately the sustainability was the issue, but that's an issue for them in general. But putting out that book initially, I'll tip my the feather in the cap for that. Were there any other books or successes that you've seen through the first couple 6 months here in Marvel that you're like, hey, for what it's due, they did a good job?
You know, I had high hopes for the Death Spiral storyline because when I was reading, I was really into like the Eddie Brock Carnage stuff and what was going on there between Carnage and Eddie Brock and Muse and Chip Zdarsky, I think was doing a fantastic job there. And it was interesting watching Carnage and Eddie Brock kind of have this understanding where they needed one another after the King in Black stuff and Carnage and Eddie were both almost killed. The Death Spiral stuff really got me because it was like we're introducing this new character, this new serial killer who is going after Peter and Mary Jane and Eddie Brock and their families, and he's got this cool ability where he can trace their lineage. It sounded really really cool, and for some reason, uh, Souls Charles Souls Eddie Brock run ended um, abruptly,
Yeah.
and they had it where he had this confrontation with Muse, and Carnage wanted to attach to Muse, and Muse rejected him, and then they cut off Muse's hand, and a piece of the Carnage symbiote was left behind. So you're thinking, oh man, where we're going with this? Death Spiral is setting up Muse getting Carnage, getting the Carnage symbiote. And that's not what happened. And I was so stoked on it. I was following all the tie-ins. I was up on everything, reading into it, downright for it. And then Marvel did the Marvel thing where they just could not stick the landing. Even when you had some big name writers on that crossover, they just couldn't stick the landing. So I was really up on that. I am interested in what they're doing with Avengers Armageddon and where that's going to go. I really liked the One World Under Doom stuff
You did.
and kind of into Doom Quest. I liked the issue 1. I just picked up issue 2 today.
Hmm.
Even though I know people have criticized it because it's like, oh, it's just Doom time traveling, but like if you have a favorite like event in time, Like, I see that he does a lot of stuff on the Titanic in the second issue, and I'm like, I'm huge into the Titanic, so I was like, all right, cool, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
That stuff's been fun. Um, what else? The Captain America run has been really, really good right now.
Mhm.
With Stephanie Phillips' Daredevil run, I've heard great things. I read
Oh,
issue
I've
1.
really enjoyed it.
I have to get back into it, but I liked
Yeah.
what I read in issue 1. So I have to get back
Immortal
to that.
Hulk?
So what's that?
How have you felt about Mortal Hulk?
I have not been reading Immortal Hulk.
Okay.
I'll be honest with you. Hulk is not my favorite. I kind of have the same complex with Hulk that I have with Superman, where like this character, Superman's that character that has the power to have all the powers, basically. And
Mhm.
he's like this indestructible being, but this one little green rock that's supposed to be so scarce, but everyone can get their hands on hurts him. I
Yeah.
kind of feel like that with the Hulk. Like he's this rage monster that just gets stronger the mad he can get, and then nobody can beat him. But really, if you take him up into space or choke him out, you beat him. So I just find the Hulk boring to me.
That's fair.
So I haven't really been reading Immortal Hulk.
Mhm. Or, yeah, or the run by Philip Kennedy Johnson as well. Like, yeah, I feel like when they explore the horror aspects of it more, explore the trauma of him more, it's more interesting. It's slow. I've read it, a little bit of it. I can see why people like it. I've enjoyed aspects of it, but it's not my book for sure. I'm kind of with you on that. But like I could see why it is so well regarded because it does kind of go into, a little bit more of that the horror aspects, the kind of weirdness,
Mhm.
surrounding not just Bruce, but the trauma and the personalities and all of that there. So, okay, I was curious. I didn't mean to detract you because you talk not
No, no,
detract
you're
you, but
fine. You
yeah.
didn't detract me. I just, like I said, there's some characters that I have a bias against, and I'm just like they bore me no matter what. Like it's gonna take a lot, like a really interesting story to really bring me to those characters, and, like, Superman's one of them, where DC has nailed that with Absolute Superman. I'm all in on Absolute Superman. I'm still completely out on their mainline Superman even after KO. And
Mm.
and as much as I loved KO, and I can't wait to talk DC and talk about DC KO with you and all that, it's just like I'm kinda like that with Hulk. They have not had that real probably since, like, World War Hulk stuff that has garnered that much interest for the Hulk for me to wanna come back and actually read, like, the mainline Hulk title.
No, that's fair. And I have to excuse, I messed us both up. I said immortal. I meant infernal. I'm
Oh,
get those
say
either way.
Immortal, Infernal,
It's all
all
yeah.
the same thing, yeah.
I did want to say, I'm like, wait a second, immortal. I messed up. Point being, yes. No, I'm with you on that too, and I get that. And I guess it kind of leads to well, let's finish up anything else good we have with Marvel. I mean, they're strong with the Spider-Man books. I'll give them that.
They are. I mean, Amazing Spider-Man has been really good as of late. I'm definitely on board with that. Into Venom. I've been reading a lot of the Venom run. Like I said, wha- um, I'm waiting for Avengers Armageddon. I've been reading the tie-ins for that. So there's some good Marvel stuff in there, but there's a lot of stuff Marvel's doing right now that has me really concerned about how things are going to go moving forward for Marvel.
I think that's a perfect transition into, I guess, what has not worked, what has gone wrong, for Marvel. And there's a bit I kind of want you as the guest. I want you to kind of pick the path to go here. I'm sure we have a few different concerns. And again, this is not to pile on. This is as readers, we're going to continue reading the books and trying to support them. But it is some things that we've noticed that hey, like could be better. So, what's the first thing for you, Matt, that you're like, okay, what are we doing here?
Marvel themselves,
Yeah.
Marvel's editorial department, Marvel's PR department, Marvel in general,
Mm,
especially with all the drama that's been going on over the last couple weeks with the Amazing Spider-Man 1000 stuff. Them choosing to put out that JRJR cover, then cave to the criticism
yeah, that was
of
rough.
everybody. And then you have artists, fellow artists, and other creators and other voices come to their defense, and then they cave back to that crowd and bring the cover back. And like, I don't know what they're thinking right there in that moment in time, or where they think that's going to get them, or it's going to be like, oh, look, listen, we listen to our fans, so come buy Marvel Comics. I don't know what that's going to do for them. Um, comic book wise, it feels like we're just jumping from event to event to event to event to event with Marvel right now. There's nothing solid, um, story wise for me, anyways,
No,
in
I agree.
Marvel right now. Maybe, I mean, maybe like I said, the Daredevil stuff, but like I said, I've read issue one. I got to catch up on that. But like, it just feels like we went from from Death Spiral for Spider-Man. Now we're getting into Avengers Armageddon. Then we're gonna go into Queen in Black, and then we're gonna go into like, whatever else, whatever the next event is. So it just feels like we're flowing from event to event to event to event. Um, I'm sure there's more events in there that I'm missing off the top of my head, but like I said, Marvel had an opportunity with the Ultimate Universe to kind of go head to head with DC's Absolute Universe, right?
Yeah.
And when I said earlier that I think I know what Marvel's doing, so they said that they're ending the Ultimate Universe, and then now we're getting this Marvel Midnight stuff. But even then, where the concept is cool, they're leaning into their horror stuff, and I like that they're doing it with traditional Marvel characters like Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men outside of like your Midnight Suns. When they first announced that, everyone's like, "Oh, it's going to be Blade or Man Thing or Ghost Rider or this person or that person." And it turned out not to be that.
Yeah.
But I think Marvel is secretly working on a revamp for the Ultimate Universe that's going to come out and compare and be on the same level as what DC's doing with the Absolute stuff.
Really? Okay. Do you I'm gonna touch on that real quick before I move on. Do you think that that is tying into the Midnight Suns stuff?
No, so I
Okay.
think they're going to use the Midnight stuff to pique interest and be I think the Midnight stuff is kind of being presented to us as maybe a feeling out period or a test period to kind of get a feel of where readers are and kind of what readers are looking for.
Mm,
So if we as readers, if Marvel puts out this Midnight stuff and people are digging it and they're buying it and their sales are good, then I think they're going to move forward and be like, okay, well, obviously people are down for change. They want something different that maybe they haven't seen before or a fresh perspective on something we've seen before.
yeah.
And so with the ending of the Ultimate Universe, I did pick up this Ultimate Universe final number 1 here, which
Okay.
leaves us off on all of our current Ultimate titles. So it has a little bit of Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Black Panther, Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimates, things like that. And the very last page, there's a big thing that says the Ultimate Universe will continue.
Ah,
So I
okay.
think they are going to use midnight as kind of a feeling out period. And everyone and that's why Marvel pitched it as, oh, well, DC's got their absolute universe. This is where we're going. I think they're going to use midnight to pivot into what their new ultimate universe is going to be, depending on how sales on that are.
That makes sense. And that's gonna be the big thing. I mean, obviously it will. Because I feel like Marvel's been dominated by what they consider, the sales, not even the readership, because it could be a book that's liked, it could be a book that hasn't come out yet. But if the sales isn't there, in their minds, they're quick to kind of accent. So that'll be interesting. I'm not the most excited with the Midnight Universe. Shout out to Midnight Suns. I got those two mixed up with the game. That's where I went with that. But Midnight Universe, I mean, I kind of talked about it with a friend. I likened it to when DC did their Tales from the Dark Multiverse. Like, it's a little less than initiative. They're trying to have it be a little more than a gimmick, but we'll see what it looks like. And they have big names attached. You got your Jonathan Hickman, you got Benjamin Percy, you got Philip Kennedy Johnson, you got, for Marvel, the heavy hitters on there, right? But like, because, and maybe it's due to the way that it, threw itself out there with the PR and everything back, earlier this month, it just feels like it's forced and rushed. Like, okay, we're doing this. Boom, boom, boom. You know what I mean? Like, and it's coming out in October, so it's still time. And it
Well,
was announced.
I think they're worried about it though, because
Yeah,
with what they just did by coming out and being like, okay, well, guess what? We're gonna push because we were supposed to have what X-Men in August, Fantastic Four in September, Spider-Man in October, and then they're like, okay, well, now we're gonna push all the books till October.
on the
We're gonna
same day.
release them all on the same day, and those are gonna be the only Marvel books that come out that week.
Yeah, it's
It,
for
it's
yeah.
it seems like they're worried about it, so they're like, okay, we're just gonna give you, your buffet of midnight right off the bat so you can check out all these books in this week, get it over with, and we'll gauge how we want to move forward depending on sales that week.
Exactly, and that leads to my second big thing, or the second big thing in this conversation. My main thing here, I Marvel needs to let their runs breathe. Give them a moment. Like, they are the kings of putting out books and getting rid of them just as quickly. This goes back to me from last year. I was a fan. I get it wasn't for everyone, but Jerry Duggan, Danny Kim, West Coast Avengers. I like
Mhm.
that book. It was never going to be a big sales book. You know what I mean? First of all, it was, relaunched as part of the 40th anniversary, right? So it's a book, a funny kind of offbeat book based off of a book in the 80s. Like, you're kind of going to a niche audience. For me, growing up reading older comic books, that was mine. I love seeing older, authors and well, Danny Kim's not there, but you get Duggan back on there. Like, you get these legends doing books from their time. Of course I was going to support that, but I also wasn't naive. I didn't think that was going to be like knocking down the doors. I don't know if it did back in the 80s, but they gave it 10, like 10 issues, and they were like, all right, we're done. Like, I guess that's just enough time to get a story out, but it was again, part of the wave of books that Marvel has done that cuts out after 10 issues. You had, I'm holding in my hand right now, you had Dan Slott personally advocating for brand Spectacular Spider-Man Brand New Day, like buying the books we could get to 10. I already did my solicitation, I'm doing my prep for that. They're gonna make it to 5, and that's it. It's already been asked. Like, this is what I mean. You're not giving these books a chance to see what they could be, because I'm sorry, like, number ones only inspire so much, and the more number ones come out, the more, at least in my mind, or in some jaded comic readers, it's like, oh, okay. I look at Fantastic Four. You had a run come out that was under the One World Under Doom event. Then you had a number one come out that didn't have that banner, that was just a number one. Then you had number two, under the renumbering, that was back to One World Under Doom. But if you had any new readers from number one, they weren't reading One World Under Doom from 4 or 5 months ago. And so now you have them back. Like, it doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? And you're not, again, it's the renumbering, and then it's the cutting it short. You have now, I'm looking forward to in July, and I think this is a limited series, so it's fine, but the Punisher, Amazing Spider-Man, Dan Abnett and Matteo Delafonte. Like, you have these books that are not going to be there. I'm sorry, it's not Death Spiral. It's not your bigger books. If you're going to put it out there, you need to know where in the marketplace these books will be in. But by you canceling them super early shows you have no faith. And as a reader, it tells me, okay, you're obviously making this for the trade. Like, you're doing the absolute most to just get that trade done and then call it a wrap. So I'll just wait for the trade then, pay my $19.99 and keep it moving.
Yeah, and it really feels like too Marvel is trying to create that synergy between the MCU and the comic books, and they still haven't found that yet. And then that's why we're seeing the guy who's in charge of the movie aspect of it now being the new editor from the new boss in the comic side, because they're trying to create that synergy. So this year we're being dominated by Amazing Spider-Man Brand New Day. So why not put out another Brand New Day title? You got,
Mm-hmm.
the Hulk. We already all know Hulk, Punisher, and Spider-Man are going to be in that. Well, why don't we create a Spider-Man Long Way Home title that focuses on the Hulk, the Punisher, and Spider-Man in different situations and things like that. So they're trying to create that synergy. The problem is for me, I think, is that Marvel, like you said, the number one thing, you hit it on the head. They don't allow things to breathe. They end a series and then they automatically launch into a new number one. I feel like the longest character so far in recent memory that we've had breathe is they ended Miles, what was it, Cody Ziegler's run on Miles Morales, and
Mm-hmm.
then they haven't relaunched yet. They're getting ready to relaunch Miles Morales Spider-Man. Um, and it's been a while since we've had a since Miles has had his own standalone title. So it feels like he's gotten a little bit of breathe. But Marvel's bringing back these old heads like Dan Slott. Dan Slott spent so many years on Spider-Man. I feel like he said everything he needs to say about that character, but he's a name, and he's a name synonymous with Spider-Man. So they bring him back, but it's like, really, how much do you have left to say? And clearly, it's not a lot if you're handed asked to do 10 issues and you can't even make it past 5 before they're gonna axe you.
Yeah.
So
And that's a big thing you said, and that synergy or lack thereof, or the attempt to, like you said, between Spider-Man Long Way Home, which first issue already came out, and like uh, well, I don't know why Spider-Man's in it. Like I think it
yeah.
was even referenced in the book, like he doesn't know why he's in it. Like we know as the reader, like on a meta level, why, but it makes no sense from a storytelling aspect, right? The Spider-Man versus Punisher is just that old school kind of nostalgia bait that I will go for hook, line, and sinker. Others won't. They got me. Like I'm there. But even I know why they're doing it, right? And then of course, Brand New Day, which the Spectacular Spider-Man book is going to be gone by issue 5, but you will have it around the movie. So you're going to have that synergy they're looking for, even if we all know it's obviously just plastered for read this, not related to the movie, but
Mhm.
maybe because the same characters, right? Another version of that, again, it was a book I liked. I know it was definitely divisive for many. This is back when the Thunderbolts came out. Thunderbolts / New Avengers, Sam Humphries run. Again, similar cast, right? Like you had a little bit
Yep.
different, with I think it was Red Hulk and Venom. There was a slightly different cast, but you still had, Bucky Barnes, and again, it was spinning off of the movie, even though it wasn't, it was, right? And that only ran for 10 issues. And again, that was different, I think, because some of that, again, people weren't fans of the way the characters are written, and I get it. Sam Humphries is a very specific writer, though. So like Marvel should have known that. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Um
and they're using the movies too a lot, like I was saying, because
Mhm.
look at what we got at San Diego 2 years ago. We had Deadpool Wolverine in theaters, and what was the big thing that everyone was going crazy about it? It was that issue of Secret Wars with Doctor Doom
Mhm.
on the cover that was sitting in the void, right?
Yep.
And that same year, they showed that movie at San Diego Comic-Con as a sneak peek at a panel, and then the next day, they announced Avengers: Secret Wars and Doomsday. So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, they're giving you hints like, "Hey, you wanna know what we're gonna do next? Go read this. Go check out
Mhm.
this run. Like, be prepared for this." So, you can definitely feel like there's that synergy, and really, they might not be the exact same story, but if you're paying attention, Marvel is dominating their publication with characters that they're getting ready to bring into their movies. Like Spider-Man, how many different Spider-Man books do we have right now? How many different Doctor
Mhm.
Doom? Doctor Doom is such a focal point in the last year of everything because of the hype for Doomsday. So it's like, well, are they gonna relaunch a Secret Wars book next year? Like, what are we gonna do with that?
More than
It's
likely.
so
Secret Wars 3, right? Come on
probably
now. Come on now.
it's just interesting how Marvel's going about it, and like you have the Mark Waid situation where he was being chastised by creators and Rob Liefeld for saying, modern comics are cool too. Everyone wants to go to the '90s and stuff like that, but there's good stories now as well, so you don't have to keep going back to those old stories. And there's great stories then, and there's still great stories now. But I think now it's Marvel tries to bank on the name of a person,
Mhm.
like Chris Claremont's a perfect example. He's a legend, right? Always going to be a legend.
Yep.
But you still have him writing books, and now you have Chris Claremont. But every book Claremont has to write, he has to take them back to be set in his era of X-Men. Like he can't
He
write
can write
anything
comics for now, but he's not being allowed
right.
to.
His voice isn't like current facing and tackling current events. He's got to take these characters back to his version of them or when he was set there. Like you're hiring these writers that are synonymous with these characters, but it feels like they have nothing new to say or to bring to these characters. So I almost kind of wish like Marvel would bring in younger writers and newer writers to give a fresh perspective and a new voice to some of these characters. And I know they were trying to do that with their artists and their artist initiative and things like that. And I kind of wish they would give some of that room to more writers as well. And because I mean, how many books can Hickman write at one time?
Yeah, and we all know. I mean, given Hickman, he's gonna only write a certain amount before he bounces. So,
Right?
like, that's gonna be a thing. Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I think even the way they handle their trades, and this is my own specific kind of bone to pick. Half of their epic collections which I love. Again, I love comics now. I love comics then, just like you do, Matt. Like I love having the old stuff. DC's compact line. Come on now. Like I'm holding to my like
Oh, I
they're great.
love those,
People
dude. I love those so
exactly.
much. They're manga sized, but I love that they have
Yes.
everything in that little volume. It's so nice.
Complete collections, all of it. And so that's another thing that Marvel has struggled to replicate in the marketplace. They went and put out their own I'm forgetting the name of it right now. Their own line. It wasn't Epic Collection, that's their bigger one, but they tried their own like value size, a little bit bigger than a manga book. But rather
Mhm.
than price at the 9.99 that DC did, they put it at 14.99. And as a reader, I'm sorry, like I could either read a well-known classic like Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, or I'm not saying that Marvel doesn't have classics, but it's not like that. In let's say I'm comparing it to Welcome Home, Frank, The Punisher. They put that one out. That one's a great storyline. Like that one is great. Shout out to Garth Ennis. Shout out to Steve Dillon, late great. Like that one's good. Doesn't hold a candle to Batman: Dark Knight Returns. It was released around the time the Punisher special was released. Has a forward by John Bernthal. All of that. Point being, I'm not paying $15 for that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, at least I'm not paying $15 for that in a pinch. Like, that's something I gotta like actively think about. I grab on these compact comics literally every time I go to the comic shop. Like, I'll see a new one, be like, oh yeah, like just recently, Under the Red Hood came. I was like, well, damn, I haven't had it in a minute. Sure, why not? $10, like, or nine in my brain, but it's 10, whatever. And I grab it, fine. Like, that's the kind of impulsive buying that DC allows you to do with these and having these books out. And they mix it between, you have Supergirl of Tomorrow, obviously coinciding with the movie, fine. But you get these other classic stories mixed in as well. And news just came out recently, they're going to do a kids version of that. So you'll have the animated comic book adaptations of Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Teen Titans Go. They're going to keep going. Meanwhile, Marvel on their end, they don't have that same synergy. Half of their Epic collections are out of print. I went and looked. Like literally, like I think there was a Spider-Man one for like $100 on Amazon, which obviously is your telltale sign that they're gone. How do you not keep your stories that people love in print? You have the stuff that you're trying out that's going away. Like the synergy in your publishing initiative doesn't seem to be there. They dropped a book that was actually $10 about Brand New Day. It is titled, it was Spider-Man Brand New Day, and it was a collection of books that were, or a collection of stories that were published around that time, right? I went and took a chance on it. I'm not gonna lie. I trade that thing back into my comic shop over here. Because it's random. Like they're just random stories. There's no
Mhm.
continuity whatsoever. The quality of the story differs. Most of it was decent, I guess, but there's no continuity. You have certain, it's like, what are you doing? You hastily put together 129 pages of story in a book that you actually priced at DC's compact comics level and said, here, read this. And then you open it, and it's like, as a reader, where do you go from there? And I actually went to the comic shop. I was talking to a guy who had bought it. He was like, yeah, I'm here now trying to find books based off that because I don't know kind of where to go next. I'm like, dude, your best bet's Marvel Unlimited, probably, because you're not going to find those, books here in the comic shop. Like Marvel's trades, they leave a lot. They leave a lot in terms of what you're looking for.
And I mean, you look at it and just you look at the Marvel omnibuses and how big they are, and just so clunky, you can't take them anywhere. And I mean, DC was
Mm-hmm.
smart. They're coming out with their version of that in those small, compact manga format like
Mm-hmm.
that, you could walk into a if you're traveling, walk into a store at the airport, grab one of those books, throw it in your bag and go. It's nothing.
Exactly.
It fits the need of the people who want to read the stories but don't want to collect single issues and have that's the biggest problem as a comic book collector is that
Mm-hmm.
at some point you've got long boxes everywhere filled with books that you're not touching again. Like I understand there's different scopes of collecting and what you are as a collector. Like me, I'm a single issue guy. I've never been really an omnibus guy, but I can appreciate what DC's doing there. And I am a little bit more drawn to them because those books are smaller, they take up less room. It's the entire story in one compact book. It's not the size of an Encyclopedia Britannica. It's easier to maneuver and just grab off the shelf and go. So and if I go watch Supergirl and I'm like, "Oh, man, I really like that movie. I wanna know how much it differs from the comic." I can walk into my LCS and pick up that version, that compendium, that small little book of, you know, um, that Supergirl run, and which name for some reason escaping me right now.
What the
Um,
Tom King?
yeah.
The Supergirl Woman Tomorrow.
Yes, Woman of Tomorrow, thank you.
Mhm.
I could read that and be like, "Okay, cool." And that's kinda what I think would be cool with Marvel is, whenever they announce these movies, they're like, "Okay, well, they're gonna it comes out that they encompass this issue, that issue, this issue, that issue, this issue, that issue." And it would be cool if, like, they had a little book to go with it to where if you go watch the movie, like, say we all know that Avengers Doomsday is pretty much going to be Time Runs Out, Hickman's Runs Out storyline.
Mhm.
You can go there and pick up a little compendium to go along with the movie with and the entire run of Hickman's Time Runs Out, so you know what's going on, or you can see how much it differs or how much and what changed and things like that. And for me as a comic book fan, that would definitely pique my interest a
Mhm.
lot too. But I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of room for Marvel to do things like this that they're just leaving money on the table. And I don't know, like Marvel's books are very hit or miss right now.
That's the best way to say it. They're very hit or miss. I'm with you 100% for that. And I just think, they're trying to scrabble to get back in it, but slowly but surely the readership and not in terms of buying. I'm not saying that, but the general idea is whether go on a Reddit thread and talk about it there. I have friends like Matt or others I could talk about it with. Like generally the trust isn't there. And if the trust isn't there with the readers, how's the trust gonna be there with the retailers, right? And that's gonna be something that Marvel needs to kind of shape up and try to get after. They're not on the verge of collapse or anything, not saying that. But right now, in terms of the public lexicon or of how we're looking at the big two, clearly DC's on top. And I think there's no real argument on that. I guess before we kind of go into what we're looking forward to, if anything, from Marvel the rest of the year, I do want to ask you, as someone who has been a valued member of the comic community for years, you've been doing Absolute Geek podcast for well over a decade and change. Like you've had your
13
finger
years, yeah.
there you go. You've had your finger on the pulse of the comic community for a while. What would you recommend for Marvel to do to kind of improve upon, their books, their line for the remainder of this year?
I mean, I think I kind of already talked about it. I would
Mhm.
give if I was in charge of Marvel, I would give younger writers a voice. Like I would, have new writers come in. They do the professional stuff at San Diego where you can go in for artists and writers too and find fresher voices. Let somebody new use these characters and play with them, and don't be so quick to go back to old heads that have a name behind them, like your Brian Michael Bendis's, your Chris Claremont's, your
John
um,
Byrne.
John Burns, your um, who else am I thinking? Dan Slott's. Like,
Mhm.
look at Stephanie Phillips. Stephanie Phillips is making a name for herself.
Yeah.
She's doing good. Cody Ziegler made a name for himself. They all had to come from somewhere, like Matt Fraction. I know he's been around for a while, but let new people handle these characters. Like bring new people in. And look at what they did with Donny Cates. Donny Cates was writing indie stuff. He came over, took over some stuff for Venom, Thor, for Marvel, Venom, Thor, things like that. And it was like the high point of Hulk, Thor, Venom for God knows how long
Mhm.
for those characters when Donny Cates was writing them. And so I just feel like with Marvel, you got to kind of get your own head out of your butt in a lot of ways and look at what the market is doing and what people are buying and how DC is absolutely killing it with their absolute universe. So if you saw that and you saw how well the Ultimate Universe was doing, why do you end it? Why do you pull the plug? Why do you take what's working for you and then just water it down and throw so many things at people and just call it a day? Like
Yeah.
Ultimate Spider-Man was essentially on par with Absolute Batman. You took you took Peter Parker, a name you threw him in a different point in his life. He's older, just discovering his powers, getting it back, discovering what it means to be Spider-Man. They changed it up just enough to where Uncle Ben is alive and Aunt May is not. Then you add that Harry Osborn is the Green Goblin and his best friend already. They're
Mhm.
working together. You have the subtle changes in the characters like that you brought in with the Mysterio gang, and you had the change with Gwen Stacy being part of the Mysterios. You had the change in um the with Craven. You had the change in how Venom came about and how it spawned off into Carnage and how the venomous symbiote is attached to his son, and he's got like, so you kind of got the ground of that, what Scott Snyder did with that absolute Batman right there with, Ultimate Spider-Man, and then you just decide abruptly when it's your highest selling book to just cancel that universe. Whether
Exactly.
it's like Hickman wanted to walk away from that book and go do something else or what, and I kind of feel like that's what they're trying to accomplish, is that maybe Hickman didn't want to write that character anymore, and he was like, "All right, I've said all I need to say about Spider-Man. I'm gonna walk away from it." So now they're going to bring us this midnight stuff while they retool and refocus on what they want to do with the Ultimate Universe and then relaunch it at jumping on point. I think Marvel too has to entice new readers, and I feel like they make it hard to bring in jumping on points because they reference so much stuff from the past, that where even if it is in bubble, where it's like you got to go check out Amazing Spider-Man 131 to see what this person is talking about. But you go to look at Spider-Man 131 and it's a $300 book. So it's like, oh, well, I guess I'm not going to find out what he's talking about right here because I got to go back and look for that. And, I'm not going to spend $300 on that book. So it's good that they incorporate history. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't, but they should make it easier for new readers to acclimate to some of this stuff.
To
And
find said history, yeah.
yeah, and I get that that's what the number ones are for, but it's still like you're just using number ones as a hype machine. You're like, oh well, my sales are down on this book. Well, let's end this right here. Change the
Mhm.
creative team, or sometimes not even change the creative team. We're just gonna relaunch it number one because everybody sees number one and they're like, oh man, I got to get that. It's eye catching, it's enticing, it's like that that drug. You get a dopamine hit because you're like, oh man, it's a number one. This is gonna be worth money
Got that number
someday.
1, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's gonna
yeah.
be worth money someday, and
Mhm.
it's just I think that's what I would do, is focus on your storytelling, make solid storytelling, make
Yeah.
better choices as a company PR wise.
I
Don't that whole thing, like, my mind went to, oh well, you want to pull a book by John Romita Jr., who all what do you think of? I made it a point in one of my videos. When you think of Amazing Spider-Man, there's
Mhm.
really 3 names, possibly 4 names that jump out at you when it comes to art for Amazing Spider-Man, right? Of course, Steve Ditko,
Gotta start with
Ramada
him.
Sr.,
Yep.
and then Junior, maybe Bagley.
I was gonna say I put Bagley up there too, but that's literally about it.
But yeah, and
Off the
so,
top of my head, yeah.
and you have Frank Miller, who you want to turn a deaf ear to the criticism about Frank Miller's work for the last 5 years, but yet don't want to cancel covers by him, but you want to cancel a cover by John Romita Jr. just because there's a little bit of backlash about it. I don't know. It just feels like right now Marvel is in turmoil internally as well as externally, and so they need to figure out their house and get their house in order, and then focus on quality storytelling, bringing in quality writers. Quit throwing so much crap at the, like, how many different Amazing Spider-Man titles do we need? How many different Spider-Man titles do we need? Quit
Yeah.
going back to the same well. And DC has this problem too, because it's like anytime our sales are down, we're going to do a crisis. Any book we have, we're going to do a crisis. Absolute Universe is popping. Sweet. Time to do a crisis. And Marvel has that same problem though. Like, oh, time to throw in another Spider-Verse book. Oh, time to do a Venomverse book. Time to go back to this. Well, oh, it's time for Civil War 3.
Black
You know,
History Month, Queen in Black. I'm just kidding, but
yeah, or it's, you have the King in Black. Well, now we got to go Queen in Black. Got to throw that out there. So
Mhm.
quit going back to the same well. Give people something excited, to be excited about and really get into with these characters. Give us fresh perspectives. Create your own new characters. Inject some new lifeblood into comics. Like they're doing it with artists. There's some crazy good artists out there nowadays, which it
Mhm.
blows my mind. Like why you got to keep going to some of the, like, Frank Miller. Why do you keep going to Frank Miller to do covers? Why do you keep going to it's because their name sells, and that's all you're hoping for, is you don't give a crap about what's in the interiors. You want that cover sale. You want people to buy that book because it's the cover. It's like I said in my video, it's, you know, the interiors don't change. Regardless if you spend cover price $3.99 on a book or you're buying 1:100 ratios. The interiors, the meat and potatoes of the book doesn't change. You're just buying something pretty to hang on your wall or something pretty to look at, or it's like going to McDonald's and they give you all these choices. Fundamentally, the food is the same, but it's like, oh, I'm going to get chicken nuggies instead of a chicken sandwich, and that's
Yeah.
what the cover is. It's just like that little bit of variant into the meal that you're being fed, regardless of the meal. So there's just so much focus on covers and you know, store variants and creator variants and this artist and that artist. And I feel like if there was just that's great, but you also need some consistency in your storytelling and not don't alienate fans, don't alienate new readers, you know, have a little bit more focus on if you're gonna tell somebody, oh well, this event happened in this book, maybe give them a little bit more background or make it a little bit easier for them to get that maybe like in the back of the book, be like, if you want to find out what this is referencing, check out the editor notes or something in the back of the book. So that way
Yeah.
I understand what you're doing to try to push people to go back and read older stuff, but you got to be understanding that the market dictates that older stuff people might be priced out of.
Yeah.
If you might not
Mhm.
get your hands on, or they're gonna push you to Marvel Unlimited, or you're gonna have to go through other means like reading it online, pirating it, what have you. But that's what I think I would do if I was in charge of Marvel, and maybe, people are listening and be like, "Oh, man, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about," but that's what I would do as a reader is I would, bring in some fresh perspective and new life, and, like, I think that's one of the best Cody Ziegler is one of the best voices in comics that took Miles Morales to that next level.
Mhm.
I think his Miles Morales stuff was fantastic, and I wanna see some other people. I've had high hopes, like, I would love to see Scott Snyder write a Spider-Man book,
Oh,
and
man.
I hate this exclusivity stuff for writers,
Mhm.
because it pigeonholes them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
got
could still
Joshua
do your
Williamson
yeah, but
doing Iron Man, but yeah.
you could still do your creator-owned stuff, but you're gonna be writing exclusively for DC, you aren't writing for Marvel. Come on, man. I would love to see what Scott Snyder does with Superman. I would love to see or not Superman, but, Spider-Man. I would love to see, like, Tom King hook it up with a Captain America story, especially with he has that background,
Yeah.
in his personal life. Like, I would
Mhm.
love to see what he does with a Captain America or, I love a lot of the stuff Chip Zdarsky has done and see some of these different characters that Zdarsky could handle or Joshua Williamson or, you look at what these names are doing. Look at what Williamson is doing for, or what he did for Transformers and,
Yeah.
in the Energon universe and, yeah, what he's doing for G.I. Joe and things like that. Like, I feel like there's the exclusivity of these people are hurting the business, because you could have some fantastic stories out there from some of these guys if they would, could be approached by Marvel and weren't stuck to this exclusivity, of what's going on. And you I've enjoyed what Loeb has been doing on Amazing Spider-Man, and I enjoyed Zdarsky stuff and but like look at you give him a chance, like look what Stephanie Phillips is doing, killing it.
Killing it.
Karen
Totally, yeah.
Gillian, there's just so many fantastic writers out there that are writing fantastic creator-owned stuff that I feel like if you give them a chance with these characters, and if Marvel were to reach out and give them a chance with these characters, they would absolutely kill it.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think that, I think what you said, it needs to be a clean house. No disrespect to Mr. Chester Bro Sabelski, CB Sabelski for those who don't know, but I think it's time for a change. Like I think he's done some things, and it has been a time. And I will leave it there. But getting a new fresh face in there in the room, someone who can bring some different ideas, like you said, a different initiative. Trying to move in a different way because the overall comic lineup has been a disjointed, confusing mess. You have some hits and then you don't, and you have some continuity and you don't. So I think that's something as well. I'm going to say as a reader specifically, another issue I would have on their digital side, and Matt, you kind of point this out a little bit ago, when a lot of the books will refer to their history, as they should. Marvel has a rich history, fine. But if your history is inaccessible or almost impossible from a financial perspective to acquire, then there's an issue, right? DC Universe Infinite, they have their issues on their app. But one thing I'll tell you that I like what they do, they are way more dynamic as a reader app than Marvel. Let me tell you, for example, right now. Right now, you go on the DC Universe Infinite app, which I am a subscriber for, obviously. You open it up, You could buy that Supergirl special, and you probably should support all of your comic writers and creatives. But they have that book right now, even though it dropped today. It's available right now on the app to read. They did the same thing with DCKO. Every issue is available on the app immediately, which is a reward for those who are buying. They also, unlike the 6 months that Marvel Unlimited gives you to access their backstock, DC Universe Infinite on their higher tier, you get 3 months, which is a lot easier. You know what I mean? A lot easier. And the last thing and most important thing is this: DC Universe has their different tiers, but their highest tier, which I think is the DC Universe Infinite tier. Anyway, the highest tier gives you access to all of their trades and omnibuses. I'm talking about like all of them. So like Marvel doesn't have any of them available. Where DC, I could read the entire Tom King Batman. I could read every volume. Yes, I could read individually, or I did this like a couple weeks ago when on a trip. I just downloaded a couple of actual books. Boom, done. Had on my phone and I was able to read like that. Access is so cool. Yes, you still want to buy it. Yes, you should buy it, but they're rewarding you as a reader to have access to these single issues, but also their entire history, their entire backstock, which makes it so much easier to have the universe at their fingertips and builds a lot more of that brand engagement. You know what I mean? So if you know, and I've done this many times already. DC will reference a book or an action that happened before. I'll be like, oh, pause, go on the app, pull up the issue, go on the app, pull up the book. There it is. Where Marvel's like wild goose chase, like you said, to find it, and then you do, and it's out of print or $300. And like, I don't understand why Marvel can't do that exact same thing and make easier for them from a financial perspective. They're going to keep it out of print anyway. Might as well have it digitally, and you can access it that way. So I don't have as many changes as you on there, Matt. You kind of covered so many of them that was pretty succinct. I didn't really have a whole lot to add, but those would be the two that stand out to me immediately. Is like get a new fresh face in the house and try to get it moving on in a different direction, where the comics inspired the MCU and not the other way around, the way it used to be. That's the first thing. Because right now I can kind of see the corporate soullessness in comics, especially a lot more on the Marvel side, where it's like you really don't believe in the story. You believe in the story because the movie's coming out. You believe in the story because the TV show dropped. Like you believe in the story because the tie-in, but you don't believe in it. And if you don't, as a creative team, well, not the creative team, shout out to creative team. If you don't, as like an organization, believe in the story you're pushing to us as a reader, why in the world should I say yes? Let me give my hard-earned money, paying in some cases what $5.99, $6.99 for books that are slop. I just don't see it.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that I was given a broad overview of what I would do if I was Marvel Comics, and I get like page rate comes into it, and
Of course.
like Jason Aaron's had a generational run for IDW on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and they just IDW couldn't afford his page rate anymore, so he had to go, and they brought in a different creative team, and I get that that falls into it too, but I feel like bringing in fresher voices, younger people, you can, they're not going to demand as much because they're just getting into the building. And I've talked to creators like Kyle Starks, who is writing stuff for DC right now and did a lot of independent stuff. And he said it's a hard time in comics right now. Like the money isn't there in
Mhm.
comics right now. And I get that. And that's why you have all these creators writing so many things. Like, but for me as a reader, if I'm getting invested, I I love comics. I love the stories, but I get invested in the creative teams too. And like, you know, like a lot of people do. I think Hickman's name carries prestige, or Snyder's name now carries prestige, or Dan Slott, or Charles Soule, or Chris Claremont, or if you want to go even farther, Neil Adams. Like,
Yep.
you know, um, they they carry this weight behind them, and you want to support them too. But it's hard as a reader when like, you get a new Hickman book, like, perfect example, go back to the relaunch of X-Men. Hickman was supposed to save X-Men, reunify X-Men, get rid of all the convoluted stuff, and bring it back to square one, and that's what we got with the Krakoa era. But how long till he's like, "All right," we kinda saw it on, Ultimate Spider-Man. How long till he's like, "All right, I'm bored of this. I'm gonna move on to something else."
Yep. We've seen
And
it.
moves on to a different book, and then you can kind of pinpoint at a point in time where it's like, all right, his focus isn't as much on this book as it is the other book he's writing. So it's like, whatever, Hickman's writing Spider-Man Long Way Home right now. Okay, how well, he's getting ready to work on some Midnight stuff as well. How long till he starts losing interest in Long Way Home and dips off on that book to go, and his interest is now fully on what he's doing for Midnights. It's
Hmm.
it's things like that. It just feels like the quality eventually dips, and they're not doing enough to create new readers. Because when was the last time you've talked to anybody who's like, "Oh, man, I wasn't really into," and the movies aren't doing enough really to create new readers. Because it's like, I don't know when the last time I heard someone's like, "Oh, man, I really went into watching said Marvel movie, and made me wanna know about more about this character, so I went to the comic shop and bought this book, and that's the book that launched it all for me." You
Mhm.
know? You
Yeah, you
hear a
don't
lot
really hear.
about, "Oh, my dad
Mhm.
was into comics," or "My uncle was into comics," or "My grandfather father was into comics, and this person got me in and my brother got me into comics," It's like the grassroots thing. So I just feel like the comic industry is not doing enough on its own to create new readers. Eh, I don't know. That's just me. I get the grassroots, like, word of mouth bringing into it, but, like, what can you do? And I think you gotta ask yourself that too if you were Marvel. What can we do to bring in new readers across all of our platforms, whether it's video games, TV shows, movies, you know, books? What can we do to bring in new readers so that we don't have to rely on word of mouth?
Yeah. No, I think you make an excellent point, and I think for Marvel specifically, that is true because right now the word of mouth isn't forthcoming in the way that they probably want it to. Definitely. All right, last thing I want to ask you, Matt, before I let you go here, and I want to thank you again for your time for sure, because the insight's been really, really good. Anything you're excited about from Marvel for the rest of the year? And this could be a small book, this could be a big one, this could be an idea. Just something that you're like, okay, you know what? I'm looking ahead. I've heard about this, whether it is the Midnight Universe, whatever the case may be, that you're, you know, yes, I'm going to say excited. I would say being willing to give a chance, but no, like just looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm excited for the Midnight Universe because I think it's the most original stuff Marvel's kind of done. I know Marvel horror isn't really original, but just the concepts of the synopsises we're getting is cool stuff. It's not going back to like apocalypse or their normal tropes that they're doing. They're moving forward and give you something else. So that's exciting. I'm really, like I said, I'm really looking forward to Avengers Armageddon, things like that to see what spans out of that. But like even that in that one, you have to read One World Under Doom, which is the catalyst into what's going on, plus this Wolverine tie-in, that so there's just so much there that you can't just pick up and jump into. Or if they're gonna do that, it would be cool if they had like hey, this is, the highlights of that this book here is a companion for this. So this is the highlights that what you need to know going into this book if you're just jumping in this number one. Um, the Queen in Black stuff, I'll be interested to see what's going on with that. Um, but I think that's pretty much it. Like I need to catch up on the Daredevil stuff. Um, but yeah, like I said, my focus right now really with Marvel has been on what they're doing with Midnight, all the convoluted endings to this Ultimate Universe, where we're going with Avengers Endgame, and kind of setting the stage for the rest of the year.
I like it. I can appreciate that for sure. For me, I mentioned this early, but I'm still a sucker, and I'm just gonna proudly own it. I'm a sucker for the nostalgia bait. I am looking forward to the Spider-Man and Punisher stuff. I just feel at this point right now, and this is coming from a more jaded Marvel reader. I'm going to take chances on books. I'm going to read solicitations and be like, oh, I'll circle that. Oh, that looks like a book I'll read, right? Midnight Universe, I'm sure just because the hype of it, and because I think any comic reader worth their salt's going to check it out, I will also check it out. I can't say I'm excited, but I will look into it, right? Um, but I do like, I don't know, and this is again specifically me. I do like having creators, as long as it's something they want to do, you know, do stories that spin out of their heyday, right? You're giving them a chance. These writers and artists, for the most part, still want to stay gainfully employed. In some cases, have to, being a comic writer, and as you know, covering comics is not for the people who want to be rich, right? But like, it is something that I don't know if they want to do it. I'll read it. I love a 80s throwback. I love the heyday of these stories and being able to build lore around these events now that you know what you can and can't touch with the 40 years of continuity. So that's when I'll check out for sure. Definitely want to see what spins out in the future um after Endgame or just before Endgame, because they can't do so much more to kind of plug. Actually, let me not say that, because they had 3 Spider-Man books pop out in a matter of months concerning this movie, so they definitely can. But let's see if they're going to give more. Let's see if that new Avengers lineup, that looks intriguing. I'm definitely going to check that out. Like, that definitely seems like my type of book. I wish there was more to plug. I wish there was more I could say. I'll throw it back to you, Matt, if you have any last like thoughts on that. But
Well, I
that's
just wanted
kind of
to ask you a question on something. Like you mentioned that you're all for creators coming in and telling new stories and set in their heyday, and
Mhm.
I get that. Um, but you don't find it, I don't know, off-putting or out of touch in a way because we live in such a vastly different time now? Like Chris Claremont, we live in a vastly different time right now because he's got this Gambit book coming out, right? That's
Mhm.
supposedly set during his era of X-Men.
Mhm.
We live in such a climate, like the climate is vastly different today than it was back in the 90s. So do you find it off-putting? Maybe you're kind of on the younger side though, so maybe that it might be different for you, but it,
Uh-huh.
like I find it more of like a nostalgia trip. Like it's a cash grab to remind you of, the better times of the 90s, and that's why we're going to tell these stories in the 90s versus like today.
So yes and no. Like, for example, I'll give an example of one I have. You had Venom Lethal Protector.
Mhm.
That was David Michelini. That came out. It was him. It had what I think Ivan Fiorelli. I had just pulled it up. That was the creative team, right? And you had Ken Lashley as well. The premise of it was, before Carnage, before Space Gods, before clones, before toxins, before he was a father, we're going right back to its roots. Like, Venom is spilled into so many different things, but
Mhm.
let's just get Venom when he was Eddie Brock, was a reporter who could never do anything right. And that's what I like about these throwbacks. Like, yes, you're right, we are in a different climate, but that can be for better and for worse. And in some ways, you have so many different spin-offs and controversial decisions, and stuff made that was just for the plot. Like, I'm gonna throw DC in there for whatever reason, but when they killed Alfred, just to do it, why not, right? Like, sometimes it is cool to go, okay, you know what? Let's go back to a simpler time in comics where we can just focus on the story, and you don't have to worry about a gimmick. Some of these aren't gimmicks. Some of them are just mainline story, telling, events that just change the character, but you can't undo some of that, right? Like, you
Mhm.
can't undo the Space God stuff. You're not going to undo Venom being a father. You're not undoing Carnage, nor would you want to. But it is cool to have something set in a time where it's like, okay, I can just go back to like when I was a reader and comfortable reading it, and see, new art, and the same storyteller who gets a handle on that character, who may not now. Like, again, I bring up David Michelin. He got Venom back then. Would he get Venom now as Mary Jane? I don't know. I don't want to cut his hand short, but I don't know. But
But
I
yeah, but
know
I
he
mean, at
does
that
now.
point,
Mhm.
it's convoluted because it's two different characters, but it's not, right? It's still Venom, and you have to remember that Venom history, but it's also Mary Jane. So you have to remember Mary Jane's history. So then
Exactly.
you have to
Yeah.
cross section of like their history together, and you have to be able to, respect the history of Mary Jane plus the history of Venom and bring it all together. So yeah,
It's a lot. Yeah.
yeah,
Or
it
like,
is.
and like, you don't have to worry about that. For him, it's like, chuck all that, go back to 88 when he was still a character and it was still exciting on where he could go, and you knew that. You know what I mean? And the same thing with like Spider-Man Punisher. We don't have to worry about Punisher in his time, when he was an angel or whatever the case may be. Like, it's literally first appearance, Spider-Man, 1970s, a couple of quips, be mindful of, Spider-Man at that time where he was in the whole scheme of things, in terms of like, okay, after Gwen Stacy, but before the not the Clone Saga, the Black Suit Spider-Man. So like, there's still some guidelines you kind of have to worry about, but in some ways, I almost feel like it's refreshing when done right. Like you said, I do think that you give an excellent point about it being a nostalgia trip in the worst way sometimes. But even that, like, for example, I'll always support Dan Slott. Loves Dan Slott. Spectacular Spider-Man, Brand New Day. This book I'm holding in my hand, for those who can't see, like, it's exactly what it was. Like, it it's exactly what I was worried about. I picked it up because I wanted to support him. I'm going to pick up all 5 issues because I do like the fact they went back. But in this case, why did he go back? Just to shoehorn Punisher in, to make Mr. Negative more of a, I mean, not making Mr. Negative more of a thing, but to make Mr. Negative and Punisher the villains of the story. Nobody wanted that. Nobody asked for that. So I'm with you. I think it's a double-edged sword, but that's why I mean, if the creators want to do that, and you could tell, like, hey, it's giving them a chance. When Jerry Dugan went back to West Coast Avengers. It had the same vibe and nostalgia I remember reading from the old school ones. Now, mind you, again, just as niche an audience back then as it is now, but he had a much longer run last time, or the book rather had a much longer run to do it. So, yeah, I guess you're right. I just think it's more of like giving, I guess it's part of giving authors the freedom, if this is indeed what this is, to make the stories they want to make, and hoping that the audience, and knowing before you make the book what the audience is, because I'm sure there's a lot more people feel the way you do than feel the way I do. But if you're making a book for 500, 600 people, I'm just giving a random number, I don't know comic sales like that, right, a couple thousand people, then when it gets that couple thousand, not, oh my God, that was a failure, because you weren't making that niche book for everyone else. And if you're trying to make books that everyone's going to read all the time, you're not going to have that. You're going to have what you have now, which is you constantly throwing stuff at the wall, trying to get the most amount of eyes possible, when you could have, a varied lineup. And again, I go back to DC's Absolute Universe. I know I'm rambling here, but like Absolute Batman, I love it. I'm not the biggest Absolute Superman fan. I'll read it. I didn't understand Absolute Martian Manhunter at all. Like, I understood the art of it, but it wasn't my book at all. But
Yeah.
like, you give it these shots, and you mix in a 6-issue miniseries with Absolute Catwoman. You mix in, these other short stories that will get readers involved, spinning off of these main storylines. But again, every reader with their book is kind of what I'm looking at. And I feel like Marvel is the opposite right now. And they're trying to get the maximum reader for, all 8 of their books and 4 spin-offs of their main characters.
Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest credit I give to the Ultimate Universe too, is like it you're using these same characters, but you're kind of removing all of that history. You're removing all of those shackles, to say, that you have with Batman, because yes, you have Batman as a character. You have the foundation of what makes Batman Batman, but Scott Snyder pretty much has an untapped sandbox with that character to do whatever he wants, because he doesn't have to worry about, you know, Batman's history or Batman's relationship with these characters, and he doesn't play with that. Like, yeah, you still have the Batman stuff, but he doesn't lose both parents. There's subtle changes he can make, that he's not confined to the rich history of this character that he would have, that Matt Fraction, say, has writing the main Batman title. So that's kind of what I would like to see these characters do. And with Marvel, is make a universe like that, which they're kind of doing with Midnight, to where you don't have those restrictions. You don't have, Hickman kind of did that with Ultimate Spider-Man. He didn't have those restrictions. He could make different choices. You didn't have to rely on the rich history of Spider-Man, because this is a different version of Spider-Man. Cool, run with that. My worry with stuff with like what Chris Claremont, and I know I'm harping on Chris Claremont, but it's just because it's like the most like current person who's doing it or talking about doing it, is at some point there's a good age gap between us, me and you, in our reading history and things like that. But I know you've gone back and you've read like the Claremont X-Men, and you're up on that stuff. But say you're coming at your age into the game, and you're interested in Gambit. Do you feel like it would maybe be alienated a little bit if you're like, "Oh, man, well, this Gambit is set back when Claremont is writing, or in his time on Uncanny, and now I feel like I'm lost, because now I'm feel like Marvel is asking me to go back and read Claremont's Uncanny stuff to understand where this fits and understand where this story's coming in." That's a lot of work, man. I'm just not gonna do that. Do you feel like that looking at it like that standpoint, and writers doing that, is gonna alienate bringing in new fans?
I do think you're right. I think from that standpoint, it could certainly be intimidating, to people to go, okay, like, well, I don't know this, and this is a lot for me, so maybe I shouldn't. Yeah, there definitely is that element I hadn't considered as much. And so, no, I'm with you. I think, as with a lot of things in the comic industry now, you got to have a deal of nuance, right? Like, I think, you got to be flexible in terms of how you, make your books and do your marketing. And you're right. Like, you don't want to go lean that way too much, because you're never going to get readers who, like, have a, I'm not trying to say it's disrespectful, but a hard on for history like I do. Like, I love old
Yeah.
comic books,
Mhm.
but like, even around, like, I'm early 30s. Like, even for people my age range, I kind of feel like I'm the only one that I'll reach out and talk. Like, I have to talk to people who have been like you, like others, and not be disrespectful, but who have been in the game longer.
Yeah.
That, okay, yes, I wasn't there when you were there, but I've read it and I have that same appreciation. Now we connect on that,
Yeah,
because people
absolutely.
my own range, you're right. It's not a whole lot of that. at least in your local LCS or your local Reddit sphere, the places I'm usually at. So no, I'm with you on that for sure. I do think there needs to be some nuance there, but
And I think that's where DC came in with that episode universe, because they're basically dropping this universe saying, okay, we're gonna meet you, the reader, where
mm-hmm,
you're at. Instead of asking you to come to us, we're gonna come to you. So we're
mm-hmm,
gonna lay our groundwork and we're gonna start everything over and we're gonna give it to you right here where we're meeting you where you're at. And Marvel just doesn't feel like they're willing to do that or haven't done that yet, where they're meeting their readers where they're at. They're welcoming in new readers and be like, here we go, we're gonna meet you where you're at and give you this new universe. And this is where we're gonna go for it, and they didn't even really do that with the Ultimate Universe, because the Ultimate Universe, you really had to go back to the end, you know, Ultimate End Game and the ending of the Ultimate Universe with Miles and stuff, and Miles coming into the 616 and the Maker, and there was so much like you had to go back to understand what's going on now to move forward to where
yeah,
the ultimate. And I know we keep talking about the Ultimate DC Universe, but
mm-hmm.
the DC Absolute Universe is like, all right, we're gonna meet you where you're at. We're gonna meet you bare bones, bare
Right,
minimum.
yep, grab you from the
We
hand
know
of the
what,
jump.
yeah, we know what you know about these characters, and that's what we're gonna meet you at. We're gonna give you that, and we're gonna build. And I feel like that's what Marvel needs to do, man. They need to relaunch, quit having so many titles. I understand that you have great depth and great history, and you want to focus on that, and that's fantastic, you know. But at
Yeah,
some point, to bring in new people, because if you walk into a comic book shop,
mm-hmm.
what books do you hear people talking about?
It's the absolute universe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, you know, you
yeah,
know,
mm-hmm.
you know, being
and
when
and
an absolute Batman book is dropping, like you see
you
people
know
there once a month because an absolute Batman's, especially if you're in the shop every week, when an absolute Batman book is dropping because there's a line waiting before the shop even opens.
exactly, and I'll even tell you one thing what that has done indirectly, because I experienced this just a couple days ago, not a couple weeks ago, a couple days ago. I went, Mile High Comics is the closest comic shop to where I'm at. It's the biggest one in the U.S. It's more like
Mhm.
a warehouse, but it's it has a comic book charm to it, sort of, maybe. Long story short, going into where I was in the stacks looking for a Batman trade, and there was two other guys that were sitting next to me, and one of them was like, "Dude, have you heard this absolute Batman? Like, it's huge. This guy's big." And it was interesting because he was hyped about that and looking for, the first two trades of that to pick up. Another guy next to him was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, he's kind of too big for me. And Bane's like huge, but it does me want to read like the original Batman story. So he goes and picks up right next to me Batman Year One from Frank Miller. He
Mhm.
goes, I think this is the first one, but the guy who was so into Absolute Batman didn't know because he's just like, this is so cool. He didn't
Yeah.
know the history of it. It's just like, yeah, Batman Year One, that's great. And it is. And he's like, well, what's the book after that? And the guy's like, oh, I don't know, man. And he picks up like Batman, the Man Who Laughs, which another good book, not exactly Batman Year Two. And so he's like, yeah, that'd be good. And I wasn't going to say anything. But then he saw the Batman Year Two graphic novel and grabbed it. And I was like, dude, actually, hey, I hate to interrupt. Like, I heard y'all talking. I would stick to Year One. And then if you want to read another, read the Batman Who Laughs, because Year Two is like a totally different interpretation of Batman.
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
just having, but again, that conversation at all wouldn't have spawned if not for the excitement of Absolute Batman that got the other guy to go, okay, that's not my cup of tea, but it did get me into Batman. Now I'm interested in the character, what makes him tick. So I'm going to pick up an earlier, more well-known, famous work of his and keeping people in the community, keeping people in the culture. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. And DCKO is one I can go back to for that too, because it sticks in my head, like walking into the comic book shop and hearing young kids, 19, 20 years of fresh faced out of college, going into the comic book shop and be like, yo, I'm so hyped for this. I'm so hyped for DCKO. And she was talking about it and she's like, I think Joker is gonna win this and it's absolutely gonna break my heart. But I'm here for the ride. Like, yeah, they were invested in KO got him into that, and Absolute Batman, and Absolute Spider-Man was the one that did before Absolute Batman, where people are, um, they are not Absolute, but Ultimate Spider-Man. They were going into the shop talking about Ultimate Spider-Man and how good it was, and all the other Ultimate books, and it's that, like I said, you're meeting DC is meeting
Mhm.
people where they're at. They're being like, here's your plain ass potato and we're gonna keep building on it. And it's up to you whether you want to go back and indulge in the rich history of these characters on your own time. But we're not going to ask you to do that. to where it feels like Marvel is almost like assigning homework in a way to read a Marvel book nowadays, because it's like you got to go back and read what came before it to understand what's here and now, especially with your biggest crossover.
Yeah.
You're pushing this Avengers Armageddon stuff, but you got to understand that people are going to come into it lost. And it's like, all right, well, I have to go back and read One World Under Doom, then into this, and then into this. And the same thing with Secret Wars. If you want to understand what's going on in Secret Wars, oh, well, I have to go back and read Jonathan Hickman's Time Runs Out, then runs into this, and then runs into Secret Wars. So it's like there's just so much homework you have to do that it almost feels overwhelming. And you're like, you know what? I'm not going to in a world where we have
Mhm.
30-second TikTok videos and people's attention spans are only 30 seconds. So the faster you can consume the knowledge, the better. You're asking a lot of people, and they're just going to turn around and walk away from it because
Yeah.
you're asking for so much from them that they don't want to give you, they don't want to give you that time.
100%. And I think that's the biggest thing that Marvel, if you could like put this entire conversation, we went in depth here for over an hour. If you put the entire conversation into a couple sentences, that last part is that, like, what is Marvel going to do as a publishing house, as a company, to go, okay, readers, we see you, we understand you, let's take your hand and let's go into this journey. Let's introduce you to these amazing characters. Let's introduce you to the storytelling, that we have here, and build and build upon a way that will make you want to explore other stories we've done the past 80 years, or not 80 years, 60 years, excuse me. But do that in a way that your back stuff is accessible so the readers can actually go and enjoy that, right? So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think
Or I'm gonna go seek out a YouTube channel like Comics Explained. Shout out to Rob from Comics Explained, but
there you go.
go check out Comics Explained and listen to their breakdown and explain everything to me, and then move forward. And it's like, and I mean,
Hmm.
I've read some of this stuff, and even then, like I forgot about it. So I'll do that every now and then for refreshers on stuff. I'll be like, oh well, Comics Explained has a nice playlist of explaining all this stuff. Let me check that out. Or it's just a way we consume media now. And there's a lot of times where I'm getting into something, I'm like, man, I don't want to go back and read all this stuff. So I'll listen to a YouTube video, or I'll search it on YouTube for someone to give me a breakdown of what's going on to this point. So I'm like, okay, sweet. I know where I need to be now. And it would be cool if comics did that, where it's like, hey, you know, if you want to know what's going on before you jump into this, go check out this YouTube, go check out our YouTube channel where we have this playlist breaking down the events that led to this. Just to give you a little bit, like audiobooks are kind of already there, right? Just give you a
Hmm.
little bit of something to drive you into wanting to read books. And I think that would go a long way to help. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but maybe
No,
that's just my ADD short attention spans at work. But
I highly doubt it, my friend. I highly doubt it. That makes total sense to me. Oh man, but listen, Matt, thank you so much for hopping on.
oh, no problem,
Give
dude.
me
This
your
is
time.
awesome.
This is a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this for sure. Listen, you've been doing work. In fact, I've been a fan of yours for years. I've been listening to Geek. Dang, if it's been over a decade and a half, I've been listening for at least 7, 8 years now. It's wild. Please though, tell the good folks that are listening, wherever they may find this, where they can find you and all the work that not only you've done but continue to do.
Oh, you can find me on all social media platforms at Absolute Geek. You can find me at Absolute Geek on YouTube, all your podcasting platforms. I got a great channel over there doing comic book reviews, breakdowns, best and worst covers of the week, shows, kind of just diving into all things comics, professional wrestling, all around geekdom. That's what we do over there, man.
Literally everything in that world is touched. You got to check it out. It's really well worth your time. For those who have listened to this either on YouTube or on the podcast feed, appreciate you. Yeah, stay tuned. We're all about comics. I would say follow me on social media. We're still working on that, so just follow the show. That'll be great.
Drop a
Found it.
subscribe to Corbin, man, because he's
Thank
doing
you,
great
man.
things over here.
Hey, I appreciate that, Matt. All about comics, and that's where we stay at. I'll be doing a lot more work with Matt in the future. Very excited about that. You heard his expertise. You'll hear a lot more of that, so stay tuned. But for Matt, for myself, we're frosty. Y'all stay frosty and keep reading comics.